bratty sister had a 2-month affair with my husband, became pregnant, and then had the audacity to pack my belongings and force me out so she could live with him, with my parents' permission. I, F28, married the love of my life, Wes, M32, 3 months ago, after 4 years together. And now I'm in the process of divorcing him, and my life and family have come apart. I have no support from my family, therefore I can only rely on my friends. I thank God for them. Otherwise I'd be a larger mess than I am now. I'm not sure why this happened or what I'm supposed to learn from it. All I know is that this is unjust, and I am not sure what I did to deserve to be locked up in such a dreadful environment. I have an older sister, Meg F34. Meg and I have always had an excellent friendship. We never got the chance to build a sisterly bond due of our age difference. I wasn't even a teenager when she attended college outside of the state. I would not say we disliked each other, but we do today. But as kids, I don't think we loathed each other, or at least I didn't, but we weren't your usual close best friend-sister duo either. There is no Elsa or Anna going on here. Our parents, too, never pressured us to form relationships. We did things as a family, but she and I were free to be ourselves, which was great. Years later, when I started college, our relationship improved slightly. I believe because we were both grown-ups, we could relate to each other better. I did not attend the same university as her, and we were not in the same state. However, we had continued to talk more than previously, so hearing this from her was the worst shock of my life. When I was 24, I met Wes. He was a former student from my college who had returned to celebrate. That is where we met, hit it off, and began dating soon after. By year 2 of our relationship, I'd introduced him to my family. He proposed a year ago, and we married 3 months ago. I will not lie, I had a perfect existence. I had a wonderful partner who adored me and a fantastic job in a field that I chose for myself. Wes was doing well too. Everything was going well until 3 months ago. Meg, on the other hand, experienced a more difficult personal life. When she was 25, she married a man who nobody liked. He was plainly not a good match for her, but no matter what we said, she wouldn't change her mind. We just let her be, because that was all we could do. It wasn't a joyful marriage. He pressured, or rather tricked, her into quitting her work, which she did, leaving her financially dependent on him. My parents and I constantly asked her if she was all right with it, and we promised to assist her leave if she wanted, but she always replied no and requested us not to intervene. The breaking point for us, or rather me, was when she suggested I was trying to destroy her marriage since I didn't have any of my own. This was 5 years ago, before I met Wes. I realized it was fruitless to argue with her or attempt to persuade her to see reason. She was acting as if she was blind and desired to be loved, and any assistance she received was considered disrespectful. That was the last time I spoke with her about her whole spouse. We had little interaction for more than 2 years after that. When I was 25 and she was 31, we divorced. I never asked her why, because I didn't want to meddle at all. She tried to speak with me about it, but I always declined. Call me harsh, but I simply did not have the energy or desire to participate in it anymore. I'd been trying to look out for her for years, but in the end I was accused and shamed, and I had no plans to become involved again. She was outraged about it. I figured she needed help at the time, but I was out. This does not imply that I was intentionally nasty or mean to her. We ultimately reconciled and spent time together talking and hanging out. She had relocated to my state and even informed me about her problems, but I never offered her advice. She might weep and complain all she wanted, but I wasn't going to say anything about her previous marriage. She was fully aware of this, and it irritated her so much that she would occasionally try to rile me up in order to get a response. But I knew better. Dad, for his part, has never understood how my sister and I communicate. He used to defend her, claiming that her spouse had harmed her judgment and that I shouldn't hold it against her. According to him, people frequently act in this manner when they are in love or have made a poor decision for themselves. Nobody appreciates admitting a mistake, especially when others have warned them not to do so. I agree with him on this. Nobody appreciates hearing "I told you so." However, accusing someone of being a homewrecker is unpleasant and repulsive. I was not going to put up with it. And it's hilarious that she accused me of being a homewrecker when she was the one having an affair with my husband. Anyway, as far as I could tell, Wes and Meg got along fine. I didn't spend much time with her, so Wes' contact was limited. We met whenever we got the opportunity, and he was always more sympathetic to her than I was. Throughout my time with him, I had no idea they were involved. Their encounters were few, and I never expected to have to worry about something like this since Wes was not the type of man who cheated. We got married 3 months ago, and everything went well. We had a wonderful wedding, and everyone attended. It was fantastic, but we decided to postpone our honeymoon to go on the Disneyland cruise. We recognized we wouldn't have time for 2 important getaways, so immediately following the wedding, we focused on decorating the house. I'd moved in with him, the house was in his name, and everything seemed fine for the first few weeks. I only spent a few weeks with him because, about a month ago, my loving sister called me crying, saying she needed to chat. I didn't have the stamina for another of her crying periods, so I informed Wes, and for once, he agreed. I didn't know what was going to happen. I told her I was too busy, but she insisted on meeting. I invited her over, and Wes was also present. She appeared uneasy, and Wes, in retrospect, seemed to want to be anywhere but that room. She informed me she was pregnant, and then began crying. Before I could raise any questions, she revealed that Wes was the father. It took me a minute to figure out what she was saying. I began giggling as I glanced at her and Wes, who to his credit was equally surprised as I was. I assumed it was a big trick. However, Wes did not laugh, and Meg kept crying. I asked Wes what was going on, and he muttered, "You can't be pregnant." When I inquired what he meant, Meg intervened and revealed they had hooked up a month before, as she was confident that Wes was the father. I swear I couldn't think clearly for a minute. I just stared at her like a deer in the headlights, and when she didn't say anything, I turned to Wes. He burst into tears, insisting that it was an isolated occasion, that it meant nothing, and that he never intended for her to become pregnant. As if that were the issue. I told her to go, and Wes to do the same. I couldn't look at them for long and needed time to digest what had transpired. Meg looked at me as if I had committed a terrible crime. She had the nerve to insist on being the only one staying at the house, because she was pregnant and I wasn't. It took every ounce of resolve not to slap her right then. I looked at Wes, astonished, and he instructed her to leave, so she did. Wes also departed, though I don't think they left together at this point. Who knows? If he could get her pregnant, he could certainly depart with her. I think I sat there for hours, unable to concentrate. My mind was totally numb. I'm not sure where the time went, but I did get a couple calls from Wes throughout that period. But I had shut off my phone since he was the last person I wanted to chat with. I couldn't believe he'd betrayed me like this. This was not something I believed he was capable of. I couldn't accept Meg's betrayal because I was still shocked by what my own husband had done. And then I noticed a text from her. It effectively suggested that, despite her apology for what had happened, the matter could not be resolved. She was pregnant and knew she would keep the child, therefore it was best for the entire family if I moved out so she could live with Wes, allowing him to care for her and bond with the child when he was born. Her arrogance surprised me. I couldn't believe she would tell me this after sleeping with my husband. But I knew I couldn't stay with Wes any longer. Despite my numbness, I knew the instant he mentioned it was his child. I could not stay with a cheater, let alone in such a difficult family situation. I realized I needed to leave. Wes and her had the last say on whether she moved in, but I felt I needed to leave. I decided to phone my parents and explain what had transpired. My mother called before I got a chance. She informed me that Meg had spoken with her, and while it wasn't ideal, I had to accept that this was Meg's final opportunity to become a mother. I questioned Mom whether she was serious and understood the implications of Meg's behavior. Mom paused briefly before telling me that I was always welcome to return home with her and Dad. But Meg was 34, and she deserved to start a family after what had happened to her ex-husband. I informed Mom that Meg could have had a family with hundreds of other men, but she couldn't justify sleeping with my husband. Mom said she understood how wounded I was, but I needed to see the big picture. She added that because Meg fell pregnant so quickly, it could be God's will, and if so, I should make room for his purpose rather than mine. I cried for the first time when Mom told me this. I couldn't believe Mom would favor Meg over me when I had clearly been wronged. I ended the call. I realized there was nothing left for me. My whole family had vanished in an instant. My family includes my husband, sister, and parents. I was completely alone, and there was nothing I could do to change this. That's when I decided to leave and end any communication with them. They could all eat trash. This was just too much for me to bear. It is still too much. It's just been 2 months since I found out, and I didn't anticipate them to pull me into additional trouble. Yet here we are. I can't avoid them, sadly. Anyway, that night I texted Wes that I still did not want to see him for a few days. He called me right back, but I did not respond. He sent a barrage of texts apologizing and claiming he had no idea what had happened, but I was in no condition to respond. I called my buddy Sarah and simply explained what was happening and that I needed a place to stay while I figured it out. She said I could remain as long as I needed. She brought over some wine and pasta, and we ate as I grieved like I hadn't in years. She stayed with me for 2 days, thank God for kind friends, and helped me pack my belongings. It was much easier to deal with things when she was present. There were times when I felt absolutely numb and unable to get up, but she took action and set things in order. When I had packed and placed my belongings into the car, I contacted Wes and told him he could come home now. He delayed 20 minutes to come, and when he did, he could not meet my gaze. He apologized and expressed gratitude for the opportunity to meet with me, hoping that, despite the lack of justification, I would forgive him. I didn't say anything, I simply handed him the house keys and got into the car. By the time he realized what had happened, I had already left with Sarah. I haven't contacted him since. He texted, but I didn't react. I filed for divorce right away, and while he first opposed it, he soon gave up. I stayed with Sarah for 3 weeks before getting my own place. It's a modest studio, but it's more than plenty for me. According to my lawyer, Wes is the only person who is still unblocked on my phone. I have cut off communication with my parents and sister, and I would prefer to keep it that way because I no longer have the fortitude to deal with their toxic behavior. I expected them to get the hint and leave my life alone, but Meg has arrived at my doorway. I'm not sure how she obtained my address or what she wanted, but she was there and insisted on talking. I locked the door in her face because I didn't want to see or talk to her. However, she did not depart. She started beating on my door, and I begged her to leave, or I would call the cops, but she persisted. She stopped knocking but didn't leave. I learned the hard way. After about 20 minutes of silence, I figured she had left to walk outside. When I got into my car, I had no idea she was following me in her vehicle. I was on my way to get coffee when she stopped me. She insisted I speak with her because I owed her anything. I wrenched my arm away, telling her that I owed her nothing and that she could leave wherever she wanted. She stated that she understood how much I loathed her right now, but that as the father of her child, I had a responsibility to fulfill, which I had already failed to do. I didn't know what she was talking about, and I made it clear to her that I was not her children's aunt. I am not the aunt of my ex-husband's child, so I needed to be kept out of this issue. She also indicated that if I had warned her about Wes, she would not be in the situation and we would not have had to break our marriage. I had no idea what she was talking about, and while I should have fled at that moment, my curiosity took over. When I asked what was wrong, she burst out in tears. She stated she had no idea Wes would be such a bad spouse, and that I had been living with someone like him for so long. She claimed he did not help around the house at all. He provided little emotional support, and it felt like I was living with a zombie. She had anticipated that as the pregnancy proceeded, he would bond with the baby, if not with her, but she described it as worse than being with her old husband. He did not perform any housework or spend any quality time with her. He even stated that she shouldn't expect him to be involved with the baby. He responded that he was willing to keep her and the child in the house while he handled the finances, but the house and baby were her responsibility. She claimed she tried to regain it by not preparing his meals or doing his washing, but he took care of his own tasks and went to work, leaving her feeling helpless. She went on to add that if she had known he would act like Wei, she would not have revealed the father's identity and would have raised the child alone. But I had pushed her to feel that he was an excellent partner, which is why she dropped the bomb. But now her situation was even worse than before. I told her I could not believe she had the audacity to blame me after sleeping with my husband, but I wished her luck and told her she could do anything she wanted while I was away. She maintained that I couldn't leave her in this situation, but I was in no mood to listen, so I left the cafe. I'm writing this from my car because I'm not sure what to do, how I feel, or who to talk to. This is a huge mess, and I'm not sure I'll ever get out of it. I just hope she doesn't contact me again and that Wes doesn't find out she met me. I'm afraid that if he does, he'll resume texting and calling me, and I don't have the strength to cope with that. They've helped me understand what actually happened. I was too stunned to grasp Meg's reaction, but now I think she may have intentionally baby-trapped Wes since she thought he was a great partner, especially after her bad experience with her ex-husband. I'm not excusing Wes, he hurt me irreparably, but the more I think about it, the more likely it becomes. Her entire outburst earlier was about feeling duped since Wes was not the partner I had expected him to be. But why is this bothering her? Why would she claim that if I gave her the truth, nothing would have changed? It's terrifying and surprising how ruthless she can be. I can't believe I was questioning myself after hearing what she said. The strange thing is that Wes has never been how she described him. He has always been very hands-on, and her portrayal appears to be a falsehood. I have never known him to be lazy, so this conduct surprises me. I am not sure why he is doing this, and I do not want to know. I'm still dealing with the betrayal, and it's been extremely difficult to adjust to this new normal. I do not want further drama at their cost. They may keep the mess they created. I'm out. Update 1: I was not out of it. Regardless of how hard I try, I'm always drawn back into their mess. I had no intention of informing Wes about my encounter with Meg, nor did I want to contact her again. I had left them to their own devices when Wes came at my house. I'm not sure how they know where I reside. I know Sarah hasn't informed them, and I haven't brought anyone over to snitch. Maybe they're tracking me at work, or Wes still has access to my whereabouts, which I know is impossible. It was as if I had seen a ghost. He was a shell of himself. His cheeks were hollow, and he was wearing dark rings the size of craters. If I hadn't loathed him so much, I might have run over to hug him. If I'm honest, it was my instinct, but I had to restrain myself. He stated that he needed to speak with me one final time and would not bother me again. I invited him in, and he talked for approximately half an hour. He apologized again, claiming he was horrified with himself. He explained that Meg came over one day when I was at work. She was looking for me, and when he informed her that I was not present, she burst into tears. She started by expressing she regretted not having a closer relationship with me and was willing to do anything to change that. Wes claims she requested for his help in making this happen. She was crying a lot, and he stated that he was comforting her, so one thing led to another. When he stated that, I lost control of my temper. I told him there was no cause for what he did, and he accepted he made a mistake with no excuses. He said he merely wanted to tell me what had happened. He asserted that it was the only time something like that had occurred, and he wanted to tell me immediately, but Meg persuaded him not to. Even after she informed us she was pregnant, he insisted on an abortion because he did not want her to have the kid. But she was keen about keeping the baby. Wes vowed that if I gave him another chance, he would stop communicating with her and the baby and start over with me. He admitted that he had been acting like a lousy partner on purpose to persuade Meg that they would never be a family, no matter how hard she tried. He said that my parents and Meg were manipulating him into accepting the arrangement. However, he had a feeling that something was wrong. I asked if he intended to marry Meg, and he claimed he was about to kick her out. He had tried backhanded tactics, but they had failed, so he had to confront the situation and kick her out. He hoped I would forgive him and explained why he was waiting for me. I told him I would never return to him because I couldn't get over his betrayal. I said that nothing could be worse than his sleeping with my sister. I told him he could forget what occurred and move on, but I'd be trapped with his family for the rest of my life. There was already too much inescapable engagement on my part, and I didn't want to muddle things any further. He begged me to rethink, but I held firm. I informed him I was going through with the divorce, whatever, and there was no use in dragging it out. He appeared heartbroken, which was terrible. Despite everything, I still love him. That is the worst part. I adore him, yet I cannot overlook what he has done. This is the sad part of it all. Development 2: I apologize for disappointing those who were expecting a significant development. I've ended all connection with Wes, and the divorce will be formalized in a few weeks. He kicked Meg out, and she found a way to blame me, but I don't care. My parents, they attempted to contact me in order to present Meg's case to Wesley. I wasn't sure what substance they were on to advise anything like that, so I didn't answer. There is no use in talking to folks who are so concerned about other people's pain that they don't know what to say. Aside from that, things are normal. I mean, as normal as possible given the circumstances. There are still days when I break down uncontrollably, but I'm getting better. I have friends, a job, and I keep myself busy, so I don't think I should expect too much of myself right now. I honestly believe the worst has passed, and I am certain I will have no contact with the baby. I understand that it is not the baby's fault, but it is preferable for me to keep as far away from this catastrophe as possible.